For years, Kris Ridgway was employed at one of Australia's biggest and most reputable financial broking houses, Shaw and Partners. He was a respected and trusted senior advisor, which made it easy for him to dupe his clients and friends out of their savings. Jason Herman's financial future has been destroyed by Kris Ridgway.
So I went and saw him in his office at Shaw and Partners. Obviously, Shaw and Partners are highly reputable, and their presence is far and wide. So the two of them, to me, seemed like perfect opportunity.
Ridgway's pitch to Jason was slick and full of promise. An offer to buy shares at a discounted price before the stock was listed. Jason didn't know it then, but Ridgway was secretly profiting from an elaborate and highly dubious deal, allegedly engineered by Englishman Andy Turner and Australian David Sutton. Jason paid his money, and for the first few years, on paper at least, watched his $200,000 investment balloon. It was happy days, but as time passed, he realised his shares were really worth nothing, because despite repeated assurances it was about to happen, the stock wasn't ever listed on an exchange.
At that point in time, I thought, this is never coming to pass. This appears to be fraudulent.
By early last year, Jason Herman was so fed up with Kris Ridgway's lies and excuses, he gave him an ultimatum: pay back the money or he'd complain to Ridgway's bosses at Shaw and Partners.
I just ran out of patience. So I sat down on a Sunday night, and it took me about 4 or 5 hours because I had to start from the beginning again, right back to 2015, in my complaint to Shaw's.
Kris Ridgway was finally exposed, as was the true extent of his greed. When one of his furious clients, Jason Herman, told Ridgway's bosses at Shaw and Partners what their senior advisor had been up to, the company was quick to act. Ridgway was questioned, then sacked. Did anyone at Shaw know what was going on?
No.
Stephen Hellberg has an impressive CV. He's a trained auditor with 40 years' experience and has held senior roles at corporate giants including Rio Tinto, Orica and Ernst & Young. In 2016, he was approached by the men Kris Ridgway has named as the masterminds of the scheme, David Sutton and Andy Turner. They asked Stephen to join their enterprise. Hellberg was hired to run a company called Oz Streaming Investments, a proposed mining venture that at first appeared good on paper. But he soon realised he too had been duped. The business had no cash, and he couldn't trace the assets that supposedly sat on its balance sheet.
The asset value in the balance sheet was $138 million Australian at the time. And as I progressed and realised about 6 months later that this is there's nothing to the assets that they've actually reported in the balance sheet, I started to unravel and untangle where the holdings are, the cross holdings.
It certainly wasn't what Stephen Hellberg was employed to do. But he worked out that Oz Streaming Investments was tangled up with a staggering number of equally questionable companies. On paper, these businesses appeared to be worth in excess of $6 billion. But the wily auditor smelt a very grubby rat.
So that's when I contacted the external auditors, and they confirmed that they relied on independent valuations that were provided by Andrew Turner. And it turned out that those valuations were not independent. They did not comply with the accounting standards, and they were prepared by David Sutton.
With confirmation there were serious irregularities in the company's valuations, Hellberg quit in 2017 and called in his lawyers. At the time, he was owed $250,000 in salary. Needless to say, he's still waiting for the money. Looking back, he wishes he'd never met Andrew Turner or David Sutton or become involved with what he now believes is a highly questionable scheme with many victims.
It is probably the most sophisticated share scheme that I've seen in my life.
How many investors do you think there are?
I suspect 2,000 plus people have been scammed into this, maybe more.
Is it a get-rich-quick scheme, a Ponzi scheme, or a scam?
Yeah, it's not a Ponzi scheme. If it's a Ponzi scheme, at least somebody along the way would have been paid. Nobody gets their money back. So we can cross that out. Is it a scam? Is it a quick rich scam? No, it was well planned, well executed and orchestrated in multiple jurisdictions with legal entities. It takes money, time, and know-how to actually do all of that. So I think it's a well-planned, sophisticated, global scheme to defraud investors. The scam continues as you and I sit here today, and the regulator allows that to happen. They should at least stop it.
For his involvement, Kris Ridgway is now a very worried man. And as you'll see, so he should be.
I may end up being charged with fraud, and I may end up going to jail over this.